I'll try to be careful here. He's just a friend. He doesn't want me to speak highly of him and build him up. And I want to ask you guys to do something. Forgive me if I'm doing this wrong, brother, but I just want to ask you to do something. He's a good brother, and he wants to walk this thing out in humility, humbly, if you know what I mean, for the Lord, so you can help him. Because if he does this thing right, he's headed to some places, and he's going to have a platform to get to speak to a lot of people in this messed up world we have right now in America. Pray for him, okay? He's going to need it. He really does. And how you can be a part of him and what he's doing is to pray for him, you know, as we will be doing. So, but the reason he's here speaking, and he's welcome to play on our stage anytime he would like to, but I've always asked him to speak because I believe he has something to say, you know, about Jesus and about making it real and keeping it real. So here's Aaron.
Hello, how are you? Good to hear, etc. My name is Aaron, as he said. I don't know why you're here, exactly why I'm here. I showed up to the festival. My name was written in the program for 1 o'clock right now. So I said, oh, I've talked before at the same festival. I talk too much. Forgive me if I say anything untrue. Forgive me if I say anything arrogant and misleading. I don't know what to say. I don't have anything planned. I want to say what you need to hear, of course, not what you want to hear. And I thought I'd take the cue from whatever's around me at the moment, asking questions and so on. But there was a couple things right before I walked up here to sit down that gave me the cue for some direction. That was one of them. A minute ago, Glenn said something about me doing this or that to this generation. To respectfully decline any of that. I got nothing for you. Number two, about 15 minutes ago there were some younger people singing and dancing on stage, and it was kind of cute and all that. I'm not very fond of kids. I wasn't moved on that level. But I was struck by something they were singing, which was, I want to be a sheep. Ba, 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 ba. Frankly, at first I felt nauseous because you kids are, if you're listening, wonderful performers. It's very, very good. But somebody else probably wrote that song, and I wanted to address the lyrics, not the performance. It's a wonderful performance, but in the lyrics, actually, I felt very moved by after I processed it a minute, because there's different ways in which we could see being a sheep. And I thought it was a good place to start because we all, at some level, are going to be sheep. And I'm going to think about the ways in which that's good and ways in which that's bad. Jesus was considered the Lamb of God. You've all heard of Jesus. You're all at Cornerstone. The Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Now he was led to be killed like a lamb to the slaughter. That's one way Paul says we're to be like sheep led to the slaughter, facing death all day long. There's another passage in the New Testament of the Bible that says, for his sake we face death. No, I just said that one. This one says, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves. And so on my heart particularly, this festival also is this question of whether or not Christians should kill other people. And simply have to wonder out loud, when has a sheep ever killed a wolf? If we are sheep among wolves, we will be killed, but we will not kill. My hope for you as a generation or peers, or maybe you're older and it may be audacious for somebody who's 27 years old to tell somebody who's 47 years old, well, you believe in our military, you believe in our government. I believe that's idolatry. I believe that's nationalism, and please complete this way. You understand my desire is not to start a new movement of like, let's all agree now about this and ostracize people who think differently than we do. Ultimately, the only thing I really want to talk about is love. never mind talking about it. The only thing I really want is love. The only thing I want to put into practice is love. The only thing I want to be is love. God is love. I'm not love. I don't care about any of you. I don't care about anybody but myself. There's also this point in me, or a sense in me, that there's a better way than that. So I'm seeking it. Seeking that point, looking for the kingdom of God that Jesus said was within me. I believe that kingdom is one of peace, one of justice and unity, which, if I may become very practical in my dealing with the world we live in, by unity I mean if you see someone else who's starving to death and you have extra stuff that you don't need, you pretty readily give up all that stuff to help the person who's starving to death not starve to death. This is biblical. This is also a matter of common sense. And when living in the richest culture that's ever existed in a supposed Christian country, well, I wonder if any of you also have a hard time reconciling those things. And if you do, I want to again insist our response not be to start a new faction or a new, we are the Christians who understand the gospel of the poor. We're the Christians who understand the simplicity of Jesus and the revolutionary spirit that Jesus came to bring, and that he was not a sheep, in that he was conformed to the ways of the world, and that he floated downstream like a dead fish or just went with the grain. But he was a sheep in that in a world full of wolves, the most revolutionary and radical and dangerous thing to be is a sheep. Not just dangerous to your own life, dangerous to the powers that be. Particularly for us, that may mean some unexpected ones, like our country that says, God bless America. It says, religious language, we want to rid the world of evildoers, some kind of crusade. Enough out of me. How are you doing? Any questions so far? Particularly, I'd rather somebody who disagrees with me say something like you're a heretic and this is why. But I don't. Yes, anybody? Any direction for this? It's just that sheep is such a loaded word. I can think, boy, what if everybody around you? What if you were born in Iraq and for you to be a sheep just going along with the herd is to hate Americans? I don't know. If you were born in an Islamic radical group that was told we need to kill Christians, would that be being a sheep to go along with that? If you're born in a country like America where we're told we need to kill evildoers who are of Middle Eastern descent because they're terrorists, that seems like the most important way we can consider if we're being sheep. Now I want to encourage you younger people in a moment of sheer practicality. If you care, come here to hear my advice. Don't enlist in the military. Don't let anybody tell you as a Christian you should take up arms and shoot at another person to kill them, or drop bombs on another country to kill them. Of course, you're going to kill children. You're going to kill older people who have nothing to do with whatever it is that you believe or we believe. Be a sheep, a radical sheep that turns away from the herd of wolves where everybody is trying to devour each other, where everybody is trying to maintain political power, where everybody is trying to build and maintain economic power, where everybody is trying to climb a corporate ladder. The radical rebellion of Christ was to go down and live a life of peace, of humility and servanthood, and gentleness and kindness and lowliness in a world full of pride and wealth and power and arrogance and fighting and scrambling, this teaching that we love our enemies. Let me stop. Anybody have any questions? Hello?
I have two questions.
Yes.
You talk a lot about Christians being sheep, but do you think perhaps you're over-illustrating the point, considering Jesus also tells us to be as cunning as snakes, innocent as doves? Perhaps you overemphasizing that language. And my second question consists of, you just described, I think accurately, Christ's life in his first coming, a peaceful one in which he didn't raise up arms against the existing military power. What about his second coming, when he will take up arms and lead armies, and will bring destruction not only to Satan and evil in an ultimate sense, but the armies of Gog and Magog in Revelation 20?
Very good questions. One was about gentle as doves and shrewd as serpents. Jesus commanded we be that. just other animals to be compared to, and there are different qualities that are good. If I were to tell you it's all lowliness and gentleness, and we just wander through our lives looking at our feet, I'm just a sheep, I'm just a dove. Well, we got the shrewdness of the serpent to balance that out and say we actually need to be in tune with the world around us and to be clever. Jesus was certainly not just passive in his dealings with people. He was very clever. So yeah, I think that's a good point of sheep. I don't mean to overuse any language in particular, just a song that started us out. And the second question was about Jesus' second coming, that being different from his first coming where he did not resist evil, where he overcame evil with good. The second coming, he's going to come with flames, or he's going to come with a sword, or he's going to come riding on a white horse. I sure don't know. I'm trying to follow after Jesus in what he told me to do, what he told his followers to do when he walked the earth, I should say, and I apply it to my life and say, I'm to be a peacemaker. I'm to love my enemy. I'm to overcome evil with good. I'm to meet curse with a blessing. I'm to meet insult with a prayer, and never violence. As for God coming to purify, now I've heard talk of this, that this was perhaps a bit mistranslated, and the flames of God being like picturing the flames of a nuclear missile or something. No, but the purifying fire of God that burned in the desert when Moses saw the bush that was not consumed. It was a holy light and a purifying fire that God comes to bring that gets rid of the evil but leaves the good, like when we boil gold or something to make it more pure. That's how I understand the fire of God coming in the last day. Of course, not everything in the scriptures works out the way we expected it to. The Pharisees did not expect the Messiah to look like Jesus. That's why they had him killed. They thought the Messiah was going to be a king riding on a horse, and he came and surprised us. Now, whether or not Jesus will come on a horse someday and rid the world of evildoers is very much his business. I allow for that possibility and await his coming in whatever way it may be, and with the trust that he's good, and he's not going to punish anything good. He's going to punish the wrong that's in the world, and I sometimes welcome that. Sometimes grateful that he's let me live at least 27 years, have some time to work it out. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I sure don't know. I'll tell you, this is what the Revelation means. I don't know. It's a strange book, that last one. But yeah, just practically. Like, what are we supposed to do? That's my big question. It's like, okay, we're here. Can't deny that. What now? Argue about the mysterious doctrines and prophecies and all that? Well, no, I'm a simple person. I want to start with the simple understandings of what Jesus simply said and I should simply do. Another guy. Hello.
Yes, how do you suggest we support our government as Paul encourages us to pray for those in power, all that sort of stuff, and not picture them as purely evildoers?
Well, that's a good question too. He asked about supporting our government and praying for them, and not seeing them as purely evildoers. It's always important to keep that sort of reminder in my mind, where our government will say of the Middle Eastern so-called terrorists, they are the evildoers that we need to do away with as we occupy Israel, Palestine, as we occupy Iraq. Of course, Middle Eastern so-called evildoers see these mostly white people coming and occupying them and say, we need to rid the world of these American evildoer Christians, because what they do is walk around with machine guns and drop bombs on our villages and markets. And then what I do is I look at everybody and say, oh, everybody else is an evildoer but me. And so there's just so much of this evildoer. So at the center of the gospel, what draws me to Jesus again and again is this teaching that we love our enemy. And once we accept that, there's no more boundaries to that love. The love, of course, of the world is that of commerce, saying, I love you if you love me back. I'll give you a CD if you give me $10. I'll scratch your back if you rub my feet. The love of Jesus was, I'm going to give and get nothing in return. I'm going to lay down my life and get mocked for it. I'm going to serve others and no return at least in this life, we as Christians, wandering from the original question, loving George Bush. Okay, yeah, praying for him. That's a good one. Pray for George Bush. He's a human being caught up in whatever patterns that he was raised in. If I was raised by George Bush Sr., I'd probably be happy to be president and let my cabinet kill people and do things that I could justify by some mental gymnastics. But what would convert George Bush? What would convert Osama bin Laden? The same love and the light that blinded Paul, Saul of Tarsus, who killed Christians and was knocked off of his donkey. Maybe having something to do with Saint Stephen, who in a few chapters previous to that in the book of Acts, willingly gives his life, going peacefully before the teachers of the law, preaching the truth and being killed for it, and praying as he's dying, Lord, do not hold this sin against him. That kind of love that prays for your enemies, prays for your murderers. None of us have had to face that. Yet we have Jesus, we have Stephen, we have these examples in history. This spirit that's real, available to us to love our enemies in such a dramatic way that what's our excuse when our roommate fails to do the dishes? So we bear a grudge because they didn't do the dishes. What's our excuse when our girlfriend cheats on us, our wife, our husband runs around on us, our father abuses us? I don't mean to minimalize any suffering. I've not had very much suffering in my life, and forgive me for using any kind of forgiveness language. But Jesus has the authority to demand that we forgive others, because in the Gospel of Luke, after being blindfolded, beaten, spat upon, mocked by the people he came to save, crucified, prays for the ones who did that, and forgave them, asked his Father to forgive them. So may that same Spirit be with us. May we all, everybody here, forgive everybody, everything they've ever done, if we claim to follow Jesus. If you don't claim to follow Jesus, there are many ways I'm sure you could say, well, my father did this to me, I can never forgive that. My wife did that, I can never forgive that. There are many ways you could probably argue that. You wouldn't have done that, okay. If we follow Jesus, who we say we believe is perfect, well, you get the point. Anything else? Yes.
I would have most likely voted against the world class. I have kids. If I had to be honest, then I would not. I didn't want my kids, even though they didn't go because they were so young. So I would have voted probably no. But
No on what? I'm sorry.
On the war that we're in right now. I would have probably voted. However, I struggle with. Did you see Hotel Rwanda?
Yes. Yes.
I struggle with how do we. The UN, the people there, the people that had the power. It was just machetes and machine guns, and they let it happen. So the powers that be, the people that had the power, your wild horses, keep this under control, they backed up and did nothing. And these people were slaughtered. This goes on and on. So how do we, and this goes on and on. Japan, we nuked them. Horrible, horrible. That's not peaceful. We nuked them twice. And now, there are allies supporting us with money to do this. I'm not saying, I'm saying that look at they're pretty peaceful people, the Japanese, in comparison to us. Look at how peaceful the Japanese culture is, even after that war. They were warmongers for centuries, whatever. So how do we stand by and let certain things happen if we pull out and a totalitarian government takes over and uses all that 80% of the oil that's underneath it is untapped. The money that can be used for evil or for good, we don't know.
The question, I think, is how can we, whether it's referring to the Rwandan conflict or the Japanese people who we dropped nuclear missiles, bombs on at the end of World War II, and you're suggesting did some good for them as a whole. How can we sit by and not do anything? Is a good question, and that certainly is not my advice or Jesus' response to violence. Ignore it, and certainly it seems that God. I don't mean to oversimplify it. The question I always come back to is, what are we called to as Christians? It's not to say the world will not continue to fight its wars. It's not to say that the UN won't send somebody to go and kill people who are killing people, who are probably getting revenge because their people were killed. But of course that on some level, forgive me, I have the same answer for every question. It's to come back to the gospel and look simply what Jesus said, to try to put faith in that. Saying we don't overcome good with evil. Perhaps somebody will. Perhaps I'm tempted to be drawn into like territory that I don't fully understand, particularly the 13th chapter of Romans that my friend somewhere around here named Chris explained to me in a helpful way. If you're familiar with this chapter, it says that governments are agents of God's wrath, punishing those who do evil and that sort of thing, which nobody that I know, even the most fundamentalist Christian, believes. Because the moment you ask, well, is the government upholding God's will and allowing abortion? Well, no, not that. But the government, but so much as we bomb Iraq, that's God's will. I suppose what is explained to me, not to avoid this about governments being the agent of God's wrath, but saying, and I hesitate to even bring it up because this was just told to me yesterday, and I'm like, well, still processing it, but that as agents of God's wrath, sure, these governments are carrying that out, and so yes, we should pray for them and should on some level praise God for even that which doesn't make us happy in this world. But the question is, should we join them? Should we as Christians take up arms as agents of God's wrath? So I'm sorry it took me about 3 minutes of fumbling and sweating to try to get to that.
That's a good point. Hotel, could I stand by? Did you see The Mission with Robert De Niro? They played that movie where they became Christians, and these people rose up and the government came against them. Would I fight against the Portuguese government coming in? I mean, I tell you the truth, I've never been in a fight. I've been struck. I've never fought back. But you look at The Mission and what happened in that movie in real life. It's pretty well documented. I don't know if I could stand by and let my friends just go down one by one, and even though it was a losing battle.
There's another movie that I haven't seen called The Mission, where there's I'm sure there's this question of redemptive violence and self-defense. The question is an eternal one, and whether or not you've seen that movie or any other movie about it, whether or not we're called to fight back to preserve our lives or the lives of others. Of course, we're all going to die. We're not going to save our lives. Boy, please forgive me. This is a question I would very much like to give you another sort of simple answer to, which I just did, saying the Gospels have given us a way to deal with this. And there's so many ways in which we can look at the Gospel and say, I don't believe I should have to be crucified with Christ. It sounds very dreadful. I don't believe that I should have to give all my money to the poor because they'll probably buy crack cocaine with it. I don't believe that if someone strikes me on the cheek, I should turn the other because I need to teach them a lesson to keep them from striking someone else. And it always overcomes me with a sort of a heaviness and a sadness that these are arguments that have to keep happening with between Christians, where I understand these are practical concerns and ones that I don't mean to belittle by just pointing to a gospel verse. This is what it says in the red letters of the New Testament. But in some ways I should find an easy out in that at a Christian festival to sing. Boy, I don't know what to say except, well, Jesus said don't do it. I'm really sorry, because I don't have a whole lot other than that. I've never been in a war. I've never been to Rwanda, never been near a nuclear blast, and don't know the history or the politics of what happened in Japan. Don't understand the conflict in Portugal or whatever happened in that movie. I don't know much of anything. I'm practically, well, never mind. I'm not a very learned person, put it that way. And I want to come to you that way with saying, like, you could bring up many examples through history where, on the surface, this act of violence may have brought about some good, but if we look at the world in which we live, of course, the gap between rich and poor, perpetual war still happening. Has it brought peace to the world? Of course not. And another question, would we allow those we love to be killed? You brought up your children, we wouldn't want them to grow up and be drafted. We don't want our kids to be killed. We would never let our firstborn go and be thrown into a fire so that Saddam Hussein would stop ruling Iraq. But we know that we drop bombs on water treatment plants and sewage plants and so on. We're attacking the civilians of Iraq and killing hundreds of thousands of people, including children. This is acceptable on some level. It's such a tremendously powerful and deep issue that I can't begin to fathom. It's so horrific, and I don't mean to belittle it by just talking about it. I was hesitant to come up and say anything because of how horrible it is and how silly and in some ways shameful it is for me to come to a festival where everybody's rich and eat food and drink and enjoy myself and play rock and roll music and prance around on a stage, and all the while completely out of harm's way, and have the audacity to talk about war. To me, if you come here and you hear what I'm saying, you think, this guy's a hypocrite. Believe me, you're right. Believe me, you underestimate what a hypocrite I am and how little I understand even what I'm saying. But that we not try to avoid this, or I don't know who asked the question earlier of our response, not to avoid it, but to throw ourselves in the middle of this conflict, knowing that like our rabbi, like our teacher, like our leader, we may be killed. Like the apostles who followed him early on, we may be killed. Like countless saints and martyrs, we may be killed. But the question of whether we will ever kill as Christians, I had to just come to the gospel. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make this all just about pacifism or peacemaking, but to me it's just such a strangely overlooked, but yet so terribly clear in the Gospels of our call to be killed, our call to be like sheep led to the slaughter. This is not attractive stuff. If you came here for a party, for fun festival, I'm sorry. I don't mean to bring up anything heavy. I don't want to trouble your life. I don't mean to come after you with this. But you probably knew I was talking, and you came here, and so this is what you get when you come talk to me. I'm sorry. Anybody else have any other questions? It can be totally about something else. I'm really reluctant to talk about this war stuff where it's so heavy and I'm so ignorant, but I believe in my heart, I saw some hands, yeah. Oh, it was a question about one of the lyrics of our band. Rather not address lyrical stuff or band kind of stuff. Although if it was one of those lyrics that really meant something to me, I'd probably have an easier time talking about it. It was a question about this line about turning water into wine, wine to water and back to wine, and it's just, to me, just an account of our perpetual being purified and then being this miracle, and then we forget, or we come to God and have this great experience, and then we just forget and fall away, like Peter at the Transfiguration sees God, sees Jesus in all his glory, and Moses or someone else from the Old Testament, and then later on in the same book he's like, Jesus, never heard of him, It's kind of like this back and forth fickle sort of like, oh boy. But I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm in a band that has these lyrics, and that's what he's asking about. I don't know if you know that, but it's wherever. Anybody else have any questions?
I did have a comment about the situation that you guys talking about Romans 15. I did have some time to really look at scripture in this subject, and I think what it came down for me is that because no authority has been established except what God has established, I think it really falls into authority. When you look at spiritual warfare and everything, it all comes down to who has authority. And so I think what God has put in place is, I looked at it in the police officer point of view, that, is it ever right for a police officer to use lethal force to enforce what is right, to protect the innocent. And I think that's what it came down to, is that if there's ever a situation where, somebody has a gun and they're trying to hurt somebody who's innocent, obviously try and take him down with these first to stop that evil from going on. But, if he's still shooting, I think, that's what it comes down to for that. But that's only in that governmental situation, because even when Christ was being arrested, I think it was Peter brought out the sword, hacked off his ear to protect, his master. And he said, don't do it. If you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. So I think, for me, that there was only that one, if you have God-given authority to protect, with lethal force. So it's like a very, very short, minute thing where, for me, it would be justified. Is this war it? I don't know. I don't know the facts. I heard a lot of stuff.
The comment was about whether it's our responsibility to take up force. Cited Jesus when he was arrested. One of his Peter, of course, tried to use force to protect that. Jesus said, "Put away your sword." But that, according to Romans 13, he says that the governments have been given that authority established by God and so on. At some level, again, I guess my main question again and again has to be, what's our response as followers of Christ? Not that we speculate as to what the purpose of everybody else's life is. I think of the end of the Gospel of John, where 3 times Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" He says, "Yes, then feed my sheep." You remember this part? And then he looks over at John. He says, "What about him?" And Jesus says, "What's that to you? Don't worry about him. Worry about yourself. Between you and me. This is between you and me." And the more we look at, well, maybe it is. Is it the government? How's the government? This government, our government's going to go bomb their government. It's almost like sometimes I take well, I don't know about these authorities. We could say that it's authority of the U.S. government because we were established by God to go and drop bombs on Iraq. Of course, there's an obvious question like, well, by that same scripture and mentality, wasn't Saddam Hussein's authority established by God, and the other authorities where people are killing Christians established by God? Is that really what we believe? It is simple answers to these complex questions by pulling out a single Bible verse and saying, well, Romans 13 says this, therefore it's good for us as Christian politicians, by that I mean the current administration, of course, it's God's will that they as Christians go and kill others because they were severed. It's just so faulty. It's such so full of holes, obviously.
I think that's really not where I was trying to address this. I think that this gentleman brought up that love protects. 1 Corinthians 13, love protects. And if we stand by and do nothing, and again, there's a time where, for my faith, I'm going to be killed. I'm not going to stand up for myself. I'm not going to protect those I love for my faith. But when is it appropriate? If it is appropriate, that love protects.
Love protects. This one, 1 Corinthians 13 is a list of things about love, and one of them is that love protects. And of course, I could think of that in terms of how are we protected? We could think I could, sit with a sniper rifle and keep anybody who's dangerous away from those I love. Well, is that what you're saying? That maybe at some point we may have to kill out of love to protect?
Protects the innocent. So in the situation, like for me, even if I'm drafted, but I know that the U.S. government is just trying to get money or just trying to get paid or whatever, no, fight your own war. In fact, I'm going to stand against that because I believe that that's wrong. But in the situation with Uganda, if somebody's doing evil and we have the power to stop them, I think the loving thing is to stop them. Go over and say, look, if you don't stop the evil that you're doing, we need to intervene. So do everything that you can to avoid it. War, and if they're like whatever, then that's all that I'm saying, is to protect the innocent.
So there may be a time that we need to protect others by using force. Yes.
I apologize for coming in this, but I think that when it says to protect, we're to protect the souls of the innocent. We have bodies. That is not what we should be concerned about. We should be concerned about
This is good, very good point. Thank you for that, because I feel a bit overwhelmed and like, boy, I got, bitten off more than I can chew with all this, a very heavy thing, and again, all these very pragmatic sort of, well, if this is happening somewhere in the world and we don't kill people to stop that from happening, how's it going to stop happening? And and with certain verses that you can take and say, like, love protects, and translate that to violence, his response was, he believes that love is protecting the soul, that love would be protecting the deepest part of somebody, that God, who is love, does not protect us bodily. Obviously, those who follow him in that, so many Christians have been killed. Are we saying God has failed to protect against violence? No, certainly. We would not say God has failed to protect us. God has guarded our soul. Thank you. I sure appreciate that comment. Yes.
I was just wondering, maybe a subject change. Why did you choose Christianity for Jesus, or what's your spin on that?
Why did I choose Christianity personally?
Or why Christianity?
There's a way of responding that pleases people, and you say, I didn't choose Jesus, Jesus chose me. But in a certain sense, I know what you mean, like there's all these religions before you, and you're like, oh, this one. Or you're raised in a church, so you're like, I'm going to go with what my parents taught me. I was raised, my mom's Sufi Muslim, my dad's somewhere between a Jew and a Muslim, my uncle's a Buddhist, I've got all this. Came to Christianity out of fear and manipulation. A very fundamentalist sort of evangelical American church where they told me I was going to burn in hell if I didn't. And I was scared of burning in hell. But that's not a very long-lasting and good motivation, trying to avoid the flames of hell. So I left that form of Christianity just a few months later and sort of stumbled through the dark for years until I sort of encountered this radical side of Jesus as a person, as a man in history who was one with God, and yet, have you ever read the Gospels? I mean, he's quite a character, Jesus. And I guess this the beauty of saying our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, like that. Our Father, his Father is like this intimate, loving kind of, for if I would stay with a Muslim faith, I could not call God my Father. And yet, if this hallowed be thy name, holy is your name, is holy, entirely otherworldly sense of our awe and wonder at God, to me is also significant. So in the Gospels, I've always seemed to have both God as friend, God as mystery, God as brother, God as creator of the universe and the cosmos that we can never begin to understand. That God as father, God as a mother hen, the baby chicks, like this very intimate and very wonderful. But I don't know, it's like I'm still working all this out. Thanks for asking about my personal life. I'm flattered, and thank you for changing the subject too, just because I'm like really, I feel like I'm unqualified to talk about any of this political stuff, although I feel like it's necessary because I may as well note that I bring it all up even though I'm really ignorant about it, because you probably sense that Christianity in America, at least in the media's eyes, has one very specific voice of the religious right, and according to whom our wars are blessed by God, our law, our government and whatever they do, as long as they say we're doing this in the name of Jesus, are. So in some ways, I just sent out like a beacon for anybody who's seeing through this on some level and saying, well, wait a minute, I don't believe that, but what's really happening here? And asking those questions. And that's all I hope, I guess, is certainly not to convert anybody to my way of thinking. I believe so many things that are untrue. I don't want to influence anybody in a bad way. But I do want to raise those questions and to keep a soft heart myself, that I may say, well, if it's true that we need to, and also to deal specifically with, the theoretical ideas of like killing to protect the innocent, sort of wanting to deal with like the specifics of like the war in Iraq that's happening right now, and how should we react? Should we, as young people, enlist in the military, or should we ignore it, or should we join a group like CPT, which is set up somewhere around here? There's a group called Christian Peacemaker Teams, where they do neither take up arms nor ignore the problem, but to go and to be involved and to meet people and to make relationships and to stand with the people in conflict and to try to find the truth. And they seem like a humble and good people who are searching for the truth. And forgive me if you think I've made up my mind. I'm here to persuade you or to manipulate you. It's just that I don't hear a voice for Christian peacemaking or Christian pacifism in the media or even in the arts. Where you come to a festival like this is a more progressive festival, so you do see those tables and you do hear that sentiment a little bit. But it still is shocking that progressive Christians generally disagree that we shouldn't kill people. The brass tacks of it being that me as a Christian could go and fight for my country as a Christian to go liberate Iraq, and somebody in Iraq who may be a Christian is fighting off me as a Christian. We're pointing guns at each other as Christians, killing each other because of the name of the country that we're from. Sometimes it just comes to these really simple, like, this is what it is. That how can I ever justify that? I can't. So we need to rethink that, and it sure ain't easy. But I need to raise those questions because I am not sold. I'm not sold that we got to keep it, giving it 50 cents of every dollar to build our military in the name of safety. Knowing 30,000 children are starving to death. Wouldn't it make for a safer world if the United States was a beacon of light and sharing and of compassion, rather than giving less money than any other developed nation to foreign aid like we do, per dollar kind of thing, giving the most? Like, wouldn't that be a better way? As Jesus said, the world will recognize you're my disciples by your love for one another. You mentioned feeding the poor and the material needs. Absolutely. Let's start there with the simple stuff Jesus told us to do as Christians. Well, okay, let's sell our possessions and give to the poor. Let's feed people who are hungry. And you could always say, well, they'll starve to death the next day. Of course, but it's just a way of putting off what Jesus has commanded us to do and to try to talk our way out of it. Or, boy, tangent after tangent. Am I going too long? Are you following me? Or you have any other questions? Yeah, the question is whether it's important to let people know that you're a Christian. There's a tendency at the end of dealing with somebody to say, well, God bless you. You want them to know where you're coming from. It's like, I'm a Christian, that's why I'm doing this. Sometimes I feel like it's like giving somebody a business card for God, where I feel like I have to let them know I'm a Christian. St. Francis of Assisi says, I'm going to quote something like, preach the gospel at all times, use words when necessary. We're here to sow seeds of love and of truth and of light. Any deed of love and of compassion is in the name of God. Whether you tell somebody, I'm a Christian, that's why I'm doing this, or you do it in silence, I think the truth will be the truth. I think light will be light. Love will be love. God will speak to that person. So I personally don't believe we need to advertise that we're a Christian with a certain t-shirt, or, I mean, I wear a cross around my neck because somebody gave it to me, but certainly I don't feel it's necessary in my faith, but it's a good question. Yes? Yeah, you mentioned my band again, that there's a spirit, something between us and some of the people who played with us. We played the other day, some guys from the Psalters, some guys from Urban Sophisticates, timbre, played the harp. We have a community of friends and brothers and sisters who are close-knit. And that to me is like, I'm glad you asked, even though it is about my band. It's not just about my band, it's about where this all starts. I can talk about political policy, and we need to get a new president who's a pacifist. No. I'm much more drawn to this interaction of one person talking to another, which is, it's hard, here. Obviously, I can't really meet anybody where they're at in this kind of a dynamic, and try to listen. But yeah, starting small with our group, yes. It's all the sort of same things that what people appreciate. He asked how we have this spirit between us. God's been really, really good to us, I suppose, and we're happy to share that with each other, with ways in which we could put that into practice and be peacemakers. If you don't join CPT or don't develop some very sophisticated political standpoint on how to put an end to war around the world, forgive people who have hurt you. Clean up after somebody who left a mess, and don't make a big show of it. Just do it, and don't even consider now this person owes me a favor, or tell them how you did it, but just do it. Cook somebody a meal and bring it to them at breakfast in bed, or say a prayer for them in a quiet place in secret. You listen to them and ask them how they're doing, but not in a way that's like, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Good. And then, and you go about and live your separate lives. What I want to talk about so much more, and it is probably not possible to like a 55-minute introduction of talking about like pacifism or something, is like, is love, what it looks like put into practice, which is at the heart of any of these bigger ideas. It's like, how do we interact with each other? And that's by serving each other and being slow to speak and quick to listen, and always forgiving, and like Jesus said, make peace with your brother before coming to the altar. That we not come and say a prayer. We come and join hands in a group and say a prayer when we know that there's strife between us. That shouldn't be. Jesus says, leave your gifts at the altar. Just walk away from the whole prayer thing. Go and make peace with your brother and sister, and then come and pray. So something we try to be on top of, but are not always. We're a total mess, and if you knew half the stuff that actually happened within our group, and particularly that I was responsible for, as far as causing strife and sowing seeds of discord and jealousy and division, you'd throw a rock at me, or else just leave and say, well, I'm not going to listen to this guy. And you shouldn't, absolutely shouldn't listen to me. Nothing I have to say to you is of any value. I can't even create a string bean. I can't do anything for you. I can't give you any truth. Somebody told me right before this, don't say anything that isn't true. I should have come up and sat here for 60 minutes in silence. It's like, I was trying to get out of the way, and like God, put that love for others, seeing others' lives is just as valuable as yours. That's all we're ever talking about. The whole religious life is a death of the self and a bringing to life, whether it's Buddhism, you're talking about annihilation and enlightenment of non-existence or something, or Islam may be becoming better and more holy. For Christianity, it seems to be something like a crushing up of the grain into a loaf of bread, crushing up of the grapes into a glass of wine, the bread and body of Christ. That we come together in a community, that we love each other as ourselves and become one body. So just seeing others in that way and treating them with the same gentleness and kindness that we would, and consideration that we treat ourselves. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. You ever heard that? It's like this, I got not an original bone in my body. I'm just trying to take it seriously. Yes?
It seems that there are a lot of people that look up to you. You seem really humble. Is it a little overwhelming at times to have so many people paying attention to you?
She said it's hard to have people paying attention to me. Yes, of course. It's hard to have people not paying attention to me. I go back, I come to Cornerstone, it's like all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, Aaron. And I'm like, you know my name? And then I go back to Philadelphia and everybody's like, get out of the way, honking at me because I'm riding a bike in the car lane or something. And so it feels really good for about 10 minutes. It's like, all right, I'm the most important person in the world. Then all of a sudden you realize, boy, just like when I thought sexual activity would gratify me and it didn't, just like when I thought storing up money for myself would gratify me and it didn't, just like when I thought getting signed to a label would gratify me and it didn't. Apparently having people know your name and want your autograph and have their picture taken with you, as much as we are all convinced that would gratify us, doesn't. So it's just one more of the many lies we're told that things that we want and should desire is to be held in some way above other people. How to maintain the humility of Jesus from a stage, I still don't know, and about always operating at 51%. Like, yeah, it's worthwhile for me to be in this band at all because somehow God's going to use it. And then 49% of me is like, boy, just feed the poor. Shut up. Quit playing music. Quit using your $1,000 guitars to talk about how you don't need material possessions. And feed people who are hungry. This is where I'm at for the time being. If I warned you that I was a hypocrite earlier, I think I did. I meant it. And if you didn't hear me, I'm a hypocrite. Yes. I hear a peace question coming on. Right. The question is whether Jesus was a police officer or somebody with a gun that could protect the innocent. Would he do it? Well, I can only look at his life in the Gospels and sing. He did not defend himself against the violence that others brought against him. So no, I have to say he probably wouldn't. But there are police officers who do that. And, so yeah, I'm not sure under what power they're operating, but as far as Jesus' life, you're asking my opinion. If he were, I do see something of Jesus in police officers and in those who fly fighter pilots and things like that. It's like they're made from the same stuff as Jesus, and Jesus, I believe, loves them as much as he loves pacifists and all the rest. I don't mean to villainize them or demonize them, but again, our question is, how did our rabbi live? How did our teacher live? And he lived a life of peace and did not ever commit violence against anybody. So how are we to respond as followers of him? Not by speculating in what he would do here or there, but just trying to follow simply and humbly, which to me is, again, trying to overcome evil with good, trusting, even if we're killed in the process, that will plant a seed of peace and bring about more goodness in the world than so-called ridding the world of evildoers. This is obviously like an impossibility. If our administration were to rid the world of evildoers, there wouldn't be anybody left. It would be killing 6 billion other people and then putting a gun in my own mouth. So we're obviously not called to rid the world of evildoers. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord." I allow for God to take his vengeance on others, but who commit evil, including myself, I ask for mercy. May we all ask for mercy, beg for mercy from God, and put that mercy into practice as we're demanded even in the Lord's Prayer that we pray all the time. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. It's almost a conditional thing, or like as we do this, as we forgive, you should forgive. There's this fairness there that if we really want God's mercy, we have to show it. I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I feel like sometimes I'm at the end, toward the end of talking, and I'm like, boy, there's something I've been missing to say the whole time. Forgive other people. Forgive other people. That's more important than any of this talk about pacifism. It's like, that's just another word. Like, we can all be pacifists and still hate each other. It's like, forgive other people. Love each other. Love everybody around you. Even love your enemies. That'll bring about peace more than like taking a political stance. It's a good question to bring up the Old Testament, that you can't just exclude it. That's right, you can't exclude it, and that Jesus was raised as a Jew and came out of studying the Old Testament and so on. But you can exclude it in so much as Jesus said, "You have heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy, but I say to you," or you have heard it said, you could get a divorce under Moses given these conditions, but I say to you. Namely, he said, love your enemy, and he said, don't ever get a divorce, no matter what, except with marital unfaithfulness. So, in so much as he amended the Old Testament and to me clarified and to me gave us something, maybe we were more trustworthy at some point, developed a softer heart. Moses said this stuff because you were hard at heart. So to me it seems like God at some point used people to deal with each other in a certain way to bring about justice and a certain level of peace, just like it's all our sort of a gut reaction. We've got to kill the evildoer. At some point, that's all we could contain. Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, where God's fire came down from the sky and burned people up, and Noah's Ark. All these examples of God's vengeance and God's wrath, of course, are there in the Old Testament. Again, to me, the simple question of how we're to live as followers of Jesus is simply that vengeance belongs to God, and as much as it concerns me, I'm going to follow after Jesus, who was poor, who had no place to rest his head, who was hungry. And as to whether or not there can be such thing as a rich Christian, she has friends who are rich Christians, and there's nothing wrong with that. Well, again, with coming back to the words of Jesus, woe to you who are rich. I have to think there is a danger, or there's a problem with being rich. If Jesus said that, blessed are you who are poor, or in his examples of the rich who ignored the poor, going to hell when they die. This is part of the teachings of the gospel. So I'm not sure. I seem to be offending you. Yeah, well, I can't say you're rich to anybody because I'm rich, because I live in the most privileged and wealthy country in the world. So even to be poor by the standards of America is to be rich in the eyes standards of the world. So forgive me if this has the spirit of saying, like, you need to sell your stuff. You need to start making peace. Like, of course, this repentance starts within our own heart. But as for, again, if every Christian were to sell everything they had, who would take care of the Christians? Always come back to somewhat practical questions, but at the same time, ways of putting off this question of what does Jesus demand of me? Again, with the end of Gospel of John. Well, what if they sell all their stuff and give to the poor? Who's going to take care of me? And then Jesus, I feel again and again saying, don't worry about that person. I am calling you to take care of the poor. Are you going to do it, or are you going to study economics and write a book about how others should take care of the poor, that sort of thing? And I would suggest to you, just look at your own heart without any, come to God with no preconceived notions of what it means to be a Christian. And beg for clarity and beg for God's will to be done and beg for that guidance that says, I have no will of my own. Yes?
It says, Jesus said that he takes care of the flowers in the field and the birds in the air, how much more he cares about you. And I really think that if Christians began to, even the very, very wealthy ones, began to take everything that they own and really sell all those things and give that money to the all the place, that's when I think real revolutions can start, even in this country.
Yeah.
It's easy to hold on to things that you time and anymore. It's very easy to do that. Even the rich man came up to Jesus and said, how can I follow you? And he said, I want you to sell everything. Like, everything is a lot. And he said he couldn't do it. And the rich man went away sad. But I think in order for us to, I have this story, and I want to say that I have. But in order for us to do that, I think all in Christ isn't always easy. There's always, having it. Sometimes it's a lot harder than you make it out to do.
Right, and thank you for bringing up that beautiful passage about God providing for the needs, the lilies in the field and the sparrows of the air. It's such a simple faith. We say, I'm going to obey what Jesus told me to do, and God's going to take care of everything else. God's going to take care of the wars in the world, all the evildoers in the world, all of our need to be fed, all of our need to be protected with shelter. And if I die in the process, then I die in the process. But the important thing is that I followed Jesus. And again, forgive me for having such an incredibly simple understanding of things. In some ways, I consider myself sort of a fundamentalist. But I wanted to talk about fundamentalism because, on one hand, of course, I believe the Bible is word for word, inerrant to God. And that's not what I mean by fundamentalism. But simply just the fundamentals, like the core central things of our faith, is to me what Jesus taught, how he lived, how his followers lived, and how we should live. Again, just so tremendously simple. A child can understand it, and all of us who are educated and sophisticated and wealthy can argue all the details and all the rest. But I want to encourage you, maybe he meant it. Maybe we should just take it for what it is and not worry about how the rest of the world would take it. Maybe. Thank you for that. What time is it? Does anybody know?
We got 10 minutes there.
We're up to...
We got 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Yes. What's that? Muslim, yes.
How did your parents respond to you
Well, she asked how my family responded to my choosing the path of Christ. At first there was a lot of argument. My mom would try to tell me about her faith, and I would try to argue by telling a Bible verse, and for years this went on at a standstill. So, and about 2.5 years ago, when I first, almost 3 years ago, and I really felt like I was blinded by this beautiful light of love. And ever since then we haven't had any of these arguments, but I just try to honor my mom. And I go to the mosque with her and pray alongside Muslims and sing alongside Muslims. And if they sing something that, there's one prayer that says, God was not begotten, nor did he beget. I don't sing that one. But I'll sing other things, even blessings to Muhammad. Happy to sing that. So I heard about a story of a missionary. They say the word missionary, I'm not sure what that means exactly, but he went to a Muslim country, tried to convert everybody. Nothing. And then he dropped his arms and just started going to study the Islamic scriptures and praying for people in silence. It wasn't long before people were drawn to him. What are you doing here? What's different about you? And then he would read the scriptures within the Christian scriptures, and there was a tremendous movement of the Spirit of God in that. I think we need to me, my experience was we fought and to no avail, and then I started to pray with my mom, and she started to pray the Lord's Prayer with me, and my dad started to come to church meetings with me, and we're all seeking God together. I think we don't need to, we particularly need to not be afraid of other faiths and to demonize other faiths, anybody different than us. I'm a Protestant, I'm a Mennonite, therefore Catholics are from the devil, Muslims are from the devil, and Buddhists, everything else is from the devil. As far as I'm concerned, falsehood is from the devil, truth is from God. If there's something true in the Quran, it's true. Some of the stories are exactly the same as the Bible, and I can imagine the end of certain positions being, well, when it says in the Bible, it's true. When it says the same thing in the Quran, it's demonic. And you have to sort of question, okay, obviously I don't mean that. But what do we mean when we demonize other religions? Certainly, I don't mean to be like a universalist and say everything is true. At the same time, I think there's no boundaries to God's love and the demand, and his demand that we love others, particularly, in my case, Muslims. So ever since I started just loving my mom and dad and honoring them, it all became really clear. Just like, let's get all the beliefs out on the table and let the truth be the truth. And I started to read the Quran, and my dad's reading the New Testament, and I can say, hey, Dad, I know what this says in the Quran, because I've read it now, a little bit of it. Have you read this in the scripture, in the New Testament? Doesn't that answer this problem in your life? And ever since I stopped being afraid of these other religions and stopped demonizing other people, it's just a tremendous weight off my chest. It's like, God, let God be God, let's all search together. Thank you.
I had a question. Like, I've heard that you're a vegan and that you made that decision for moral reasons, and I was just curious as if you could explain that.
Question about my diet, being vegan. Not true. Which is a good example of how you can't believe I don't know if you said the media. I'm not obviously an important character in the media, but there was a website, media on some level, where it was an animal rights website. They did an interview with me and took short clips from it where I had said that at some point I had taken up a vegan diet, which I did. I was vegan, very hardline for about 6 years. Before I was a Christian, even while I was a Christian for a while. Anymore, I've converted to something like if you want to know about my diet, there's a whole lot of food that gets thrown away in the world, in America in particular, and if you can find a steak in the trash, that's not hurting that cow because it's already killed and been thrown away. So as much as I love animals and find the beauty in animals and don't want to support factory farming and all the ways in which they're raised up to be a hamburger, I don't think that's really the way God intended. If you look at the Garden of Eden kind of thing, I don't think it's wrong to eat meat, but I sort of skirt the whole issue by eating out of dumpsters, which is very doable, and to my knowledge I've never really gotten sick from it. But yes, I would advise you to look in smaller supermarkets that don't have trash compactors or bakeries, anywhere that's throwing food away, and you can probably find enough food to feed your entire family. Not only is it free, but you're not wasting the packaging. Of all the things, we're to talk about peacemaking, loving your enemies, honoring your mother and father, and then you talk about eating out of dumpsters and everything. Well, that's cool. I mean, and this has some biblical backing for those of us who need to hear everything from the Bible. It's like, well, what does it say in the Bible about dumpster diving? Well, of course, it says about as much in the Bible about dumpster diving as it says about abortion or gay marriage, but it does say let nothing be wasted when Jesus turned, maybe fed the 5,000, and Paul does say our abundance should supply for the needs of others. That's just one way of doing it. We have abundance. Rather than buying food, here's an idea. Eat the food other people are throwing away, take the money we would have bought food with and send that to somebody who's hungry elsewhere. It's just a pragmatic kind of thought. Thanks for asking about my diet. I'm flattered.
What do you guys do in your band? I guess like Christ and the relationship with our band.
Another question about my band is sort of similar to the other question about what we do to keep Christ centered. Not much. We're not very united, and we don't have a whole lot of love between us, and we don't have a very strong Christ center. We are all different places, and again, I think if you saw the way we lived, really behind closed doors, you'd say this isn't Christ-centered at all. As much as I do that with the other guys in my band, I can't believe they're doing that. I can't believe they're doing that. Until you reach a point where you yourself commit something so wrong or cross lines that are so clear, where you say, I've just done so many things that are wrong, is what I'm trying to tell you, where I realize I can no longer judge anybody, and then I just start judging again, and then I commit wrong again. I can't really answer the question because we don't have a Christ-centered band, but we're trying. So the practical sort of things is praying together, which we never did a whole lot before this tour, where we started doing a liturgy where we have like a Bible reading and prayer together. It's all the normal things, this is nothing unique about us, but it's just sometimes I feel like the smallest shred of submission to God. It says, draw near to God and He'll draw near to you. My mom says, one step toward God and God takes 10 steps to you. Walk to God, God will run to you. This is the prodigal son. We come kind of stumbling back and God comes running to us. Our Father comes running to us. It doesn't take a whole lot. If you think about our average day of 16 hours of being awake, do we even pray 1/10 of that? Do we even pray an hour and a half? No, probably not. I don't. Do we read the scriptures 1/10 of that? Do we meditate 1/10 of that? Are we fasting? Are we worshiping God? It's just the normal things, the same things that the gospel says to do, the same things all the saints have done, the same things Jesus himself did, withdrawing to find a place to be alone for a while, to pray to God in secret and that sort of thing. Again, nothing original. My diet, that's a good question. I can answer this is what I do. As far as what we do to try to remain Christ-centered, it's very normal stuff. And we fail. We fail again. Thank you. Yes? The bird on stage? I can't explain. Is Casey here? He can explain it. One of my dearest brothers, we asked him to come and dance on stage to kind of energize us, and so he made that costume out of trash stuff that afternoon and came and danced. No meaning to it, not like the holy dove of peace or anything. Although, to me it kind of was joyful and grateful, nor was it like a pagan, we're worshiping this thing, but it was just our buddy made a silly costume and danced to, so we'd have a little more fun. But by the way, forgive me, I feel so awkward being here, answering questions, here you caring about my answer or something like that. It's really, really weird. So I'm sorry. I don't know if I should be doing this at all, but here I am, and like Glenn said, say a prayer for me. That's a good piece of advice as far as I'm concerned. It's don't tell me this or that about my band or anything, but say a prayer for me. You know what I mean? And maybe we pray for each other and listen to each other and take care of one another and share with each other and all the rest. Daniel.
I'm sort of going through now what you were discussing earlier. Being able to go through that, pray with Him, and just basically I'm learning that God is so much bigger than just Christianity. How dare I limit Him to just my tribe? So how did you reconcile that, especially within our culture that tells us This is it. I mean, God is in the grass. He's in our friends.
Right. Oh boy, you're. So I think I cracked the can, but you're opening the can of worms. I mean, that's a big one that's going to get me in a whole lot of trouble if I start to answer. But I don't mind that. I'll get myself in trouble. But I do tread cautiously and not try to lead anybody astray or anything. But the question is about his experience that God is bigger than Christianity, and how dare we say that God is exclusive to my tribe or to my understanding of God. And this is true in my experience as well. If we say the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, that's the fruit, that's the tangible stuff that we can taste and see of the Spirit of God, right? This is what Paul wrote. Then we can say, what do we make of people who claim to be Christian that don't exhibit or possess any of those things? Or what do we make of people who don't claim to be Christian of other religions that do to glow with this? What do we make of people who don't claim to be Christian that do demonstrate love? And Jesus said, you'll be recognized as my disciples by this, that you love one another. You take two Muslims who love one another and two Christians who don't. Who's a Christian? Well, this is a very important question, and one that obviously I have my leanings by the way I'm phrasing it. I think it's not a matter of the language that we use, or the box that we check. If the Census Bureau comes by and says, we want to know how many Christians there are in America, because last year there was 80%. This year there may be 78%. That God sees our hearts, and whether that's me parading around as if I were humble and talking about this or that and trying to give you the appearance that I am who I am, or all of us coming here saying we're Christians and wanting to be seen or considered as this or that. Are we Christians? I sure don't know. God knows that. Are there going to be Muslims in heaven? I sure hope so. Yes. Does that mean it must be 2 o'clock if I get notes open? Is it 2? Is it time to go? Is it 2 o'clock already? Okay, it's 2 o'clock. I may as well take it a step further, Daniel, to answer your question. Are there going to be Muslims in heaven? So-called Muslims, the word Muslim means one who's submitted to God. The word Islam means peace, a religion of peace. There are going to be those submitted to God in that way, living peacefully in heaven. Rather than saying, I hope so, I think so. And may our prayer be that Muslims be taken into God's arms and that atheists be taken into God's arms. If he's willing to accept us, may he take us. May God take us all into his arms if he's willing. Please forgive me for everything I've said that's wrong, and thank you for being here to love each other. Please take care of each other wherever you go in your life. Believe in God and trust in God. Don't trust in me or anything I say, of course. But trust in God. And by God, I mean that power of love that's undeniable, and that light that is undeniable, and that truth that is true at the beginning and the end, it always has been and always will be. Peace be with you, my precious brothers and sisters. Bye-bye.